everybody. So today we are at Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas, and we're gonna talk to Mike Smith, who's on staff here, and get to know him a little bit better, as well as the gear that they have running at front of house and any other tips and tricks he has for us. So let's head on in. How long have you been here specifically?
I've been Prestonwood for 5.5 years. Came in January of 2019.
Wow, okay. So I wouldn't say it's super long, actually.
No, before that, I had been at a church in Southern California for over 30 years. So,
okay. Yeah. Gotcha. So
Yep.
moved over here.
Yep.
And then, like audio industry wise, you know, what's kind of some of your background, at least like getting into it? Are you like a musician or?
I have a degree in music.
Oh, okay.
But ultimately out of college, short story is I was on staff at the church. It was Harvest Christian Fellowship in California. I ended up coming on as an audio guy early 90s. And then the more and more I did that, the more and more I felt like this is what I was supposed to be doing. And my music degree does help me with what I do.
Right.
Just being able to kind of speak the language. But yeah, then basically just been doing audio since early 90s, so over 30 years. And then at one point, and then I became a director there, and I wasn't doing audio as much. Was kind of leading the team.
Yeah.
But then the Lord called us out here in at 2018 and moved here 2019. And
nice.
And now I'm back to doing what I love. So
cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about your actual gear that you're using here. Okay. So we have a Digico SD10 or SD7.
Yep.
I've used the 10, so I'm just used to saying. I'm used to saying 10.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like how long this console's been here, and anything that's like kind of stood out that you maybe like or maybe don't.
Yeah, I mean, we were already Digico in other rooms, or in one other room, and so it made the most sense. We're running a really high input-output count here, especially for our Christmas show.
Right.
There's really only, especially at the time, there were only a handful of consoles on the market that could handle what we do.
Right.
And so, we're running probably close to 200 inputs for Christmas. Oof. And then like 70 mixes for monitors. So we have SD7 Quantum here and monitors, and then downstairs in broadcast, and we put those in January of 2020. So 4.5 years.
That's also pretty recent, actually.
Yeah. And before that, we were on Studers.
Okay.
But we were having they were kind of aging out. They were having a lot of problems with them. I mean, sonically, they sounded great, but we were just having a lot of problems with them crashing and stuff. And again, we were pretty much tapped out on what we could do with them. So,
sure.
So been really happy with it, especially the Quantum with the mustard processing and the spice rack and all that. It really takes it up a level.
I've heard some good things about the whole mustard and all that.
Yeah, it changes the whole dynamic of what the console sounds like. It really sounds great.
Yeah, a lot of options like saturation wise and some of the other like EQs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you've got multiple choices for your compressors, different styles of compression that you can emulate. And,
right.
But yeah, I've got them, especially with the most recent software upgrade that came out now. I'm doing all my vocals, all my tracks, and all my money channels all have mustard EQ and compression and stuff on them. So
gotcha. Yeah. And then in terms of like the PA, how new is that as well?
That's new as of last year.
Oh, wow.
So we're on a D&B Soundscape rig.
Gotcha.
So it's immersive audio.
Nice.
It goes all the way around the room.
Yeah, I've never had the pleasure of. I've heard of it. I've never had the pleasure of listening to it.
Yeah. So it's a whole new world of mixing audio, and it's been we put it in beginning of September last year was the first Sunday with it, and then we had like 9 or 10 weeks before we hit Christmas. And then really since after Christmas, the beginning of this year, it's just been lots of experimenting and started a Facebook group for it and just playing around with it because it's all object-based mixing. And so every one of those, there's 64 objects, and every one of those objects has got multiple parameters. And so figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And so it's been a lot of fun, and it's coming together really nicely. But so Christmas this year should sound better than last year.
I would imagine. Yeah, I where I mix, we also use D&B, but not the immersive portion of it. So in your opinion, does it feel like, I don't know, maybe more even throughout the room type of a thing?
This is the most even PA I've heard in my entire career.
Wow, okay.
Like every seat sounds the same.
Yeah.
Nearly. I mean, it's
I've heard
crazy.
It's not like some marketing thing. Like it's
not
legit.
It is real.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I mean, so
I'll have to make sure I stop by at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Or if you have a reversal, I'd be interested in showing up for that too. That's awesome. That's pretty great. Cool. So you guys use you guys have a choir and sometimes like an orchestra here, and that's a ton of inputs, a ton of instruments. What would you say are like when you're mixing on those days, or some of like the challenges that you have just kind of coming in? Because you know, you mentioned you don't have rehearsals, right? So you're coming in on Sunday morning, going right into it. I know you have like templates, I'm sure, and stuff like that. But.
Yeah, so the inputs are always landing in the same input. Like the first violins are always landing in the same channels every time, and they're pretty much dialed in. So we don't even get so right now we're on summer break, so choir and orchestra are off.
Okay.
They pick back up here in a couple weeks, mid-August. But even when they're in, we actually don't get a sound check with them on Sundays. Like our rhythm section and vocal team sound check in the mornings, and then the first time I hear them is when they play first song, first service. But again, it's not like I'm building things from scratch. Right. And so I would say the only real challenge with having them in is that we've got choir fills that are off during the summer, so it's a lot less PA shooting on the stage.
A lot less stage noise.
Yeah, I mean, and the PA is pretty directional. But you're shooting an entire PA the opposite direction, and no matter how good it is, there's still some physics that are involved.
Sure.
But I mean, I feel like we've mitigated that as best as we can.
Are you throwing like PSA or PSC plugins on it, or any?
Not
sort
on
of
them,
gates for
no.
them,
We used to use QuireFlex, and we're not using it now because we don't like it. I still am a huge fan of it. Yeah. But with Soundscape, it's already doing processing, and when you add QuireFlex on top of that, it gets really squirrely. Really weird, yeah. And so the choir sounds fantastic on the system. So we have 8 Sheps mics across the choir loft, and
you just sit there and ready to go.
And I ride those. Yeah. So so anyway, that's probably like the biggest challenge. Obviously, once people are standing in the loft, those people soak up a lot of that energy, and it helps a lot. But during rehearsal, we have them on regardless, because we're wanting to make sure it all sounds like it's supposed to be. Our monitor guy will walk up there and listen to everything and make sure it's balanced. So during rehearsal, I'm getting a lot of stuff coming back at me, but I know it's not going to be that way once the service fills up and people are in the seats and people are in the choir loft.
Yeah. So a lot of churches do, like, obviously you guys have a broadcast mix as well. You have a separate console for that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're not sending it from front of house at all?
No, I do have a broadcast mix built in here. So I used to, we've always had a broadcast console, but there are certain events that are smaller that we're not streaming, so we don't necessarily have a broadcast engineer.
Gotcha.
And so I still have to be able to generate a left-right out of here. Gotcha. And so even though we're in immersive, so it's no longer left-right, I still have my legacy routing with a left-right mix going out. Gotcha. Most of the people are never hearing it because it's going to a recorder right here, but it's just there just in case.
Right. And so kind of back into like the PA in terms of, like, I haven't been here in a long time, and I kind of knew how loud you guys were running it in the past, but with the new PA and everything, like, what's kind of like your, the meters that you're looking at in Smart in terms
We're usually
of loudness?
Like, I'll peak at some point on a Sunday. We're running A-weighted at 94.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and honestly, I'll get to the end of the day and sometimes look, and there was like a 96 or 97, but that was usually like probably one note at the end of a big song.
Chorus or something.
But most of the time, we're up in the low 90s.
Gotcha.
So it's not too bad, and the PA is really even again, like I said, and so it doesn't feel as loud as it is because it's really natural sounding.
Yeah, and do you have subs on the floor at all? I mean,
So there's 5 arrays of XSL across the front or across on that truss with 2 KSL subs between each of those. So there's 8 KSL subs in the air, plus outfill boxes, and then I have 6 SL subs under the floor or under the stage.
So nothing too crazy on the floor then. Yeah.
They're triple 21s. So
okay. Well, they have.
So six work.
They could do stuff for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have 10 on the floor, and I think they're 15s.
Yeah.
Which can also do quite a bit.
Yeah.
The only thing we don't have any hung, which sometimes if you're pushing it, you're kind of killing people in the front, which you're probably not doing quite as much here just with the setup. But
yeah, it just depends. Again, with as big as our room is, we really wanted to have full range as much as we can hit all the way to the back of the balcony because we don't have any, there's no balcony delays on the front. We have a ring of delays under the balcony, and then we have a ring of delays in the back balcony. So there's a whole row of seating in the very back balcony.
Gotcha.
But everything else in the balcony is all being hit from the main arrays. And so we wanted to get low end pushed to them as much as possible, so it's not anemic up there.
Sure,
but you got to have the floor subs to, I call it, you need that audio hug. You know, you need to have that stuff that kind of hits you in the chest. So
yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, I kind of wanted to get into like Wave stuff, Waves plugins, stuff like that. Could you tell me a little bit about I don't know, some of the things that you couldn't go without on a Sunday morning? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so with the Quantum, it has 2 engines in it, and so you have to have dual Waves rigs. So there's an A rig and a B rig, so I have the B rig screen kind of there so I can see it, but I'm really not.
Right around the corner,
I can touch it if I need to. I can flip all these around to get to them from over there.
Wow. Okay.
But with Digico, you have controls, so where when you select a channel, the channel pops up on here.
Okay.
All of my vocal plugin chains are exactly the same. I have 15 channels. We don't have 15 vocals at one time, but there are 15 vocal wireless mics. 4 of them are dedicated to 4 worship leaders, and then the other 11 they rotate for different people. But this is my vocal chain for all of them. It has a PSC at the top, and then it goes into a de-esser, and then my Desert Island plugin is the F6. I love the F6. I should back up. The channel strip actually hits the mustard processing first. So high pass, low pass, EQ, compression here. Then it goes into waves, and then it hits this plugin and plugin chain, and the very last thing is just this LA2A, like 2 dB, just a little bit of mastering compression in the back end again.
Yeah.
So the F6, I love the F6. And it really makes you so you can really get those vocals when they're really singing soft and low, and the same when they're singing really loud and bright. It's not harsh, and it keeps it really balanced.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know that I could, I feel like I'm such a bad mixer if I don't have any sort of multi-band or dynamic EQ.
I got addicted to it, yeah.
You get so addicted to it because it fixes so many problems, and you can also just raise the level of the mix.
When they're singing, if I'm doing it right, and that's the problem with a F6, with any plugin, to be honest with you, but with F6 in particular, you have to be really careful and really specific about what you're doing, because you can bury yourself.
Yeah, you can make it to where you can't understand.
You're taking audio away by doing that. But like if I have someone singing at a fairly soft level, maybe in their lower register, like an alto, you'll see this stuff, and then the low mids start scooping, but really nothing up here is moving. And then when they're really digging in, you see it shift to where it's up here, and it's cutting all that stuff out. So that way, and I'm doing one of the things with Soundscape and D&B in particular, but Soundscape especially, I'm really not doing much EQ at all on the channels. I mean, I'm
actually probably like turned on, but you're not really doing.
They're on. I mean, but I think the most EQ I'm doing is like 3 dB.
Yeah, just some soft.
3-4 dB out, and I've got actually with the new system, I'm actually adding high frequencies back into the microphones. I've got like a 3 dB shelf on all the top at like 7.5, just to add some air to it. So, and then all my background singers. So I've got macros that send people make them either leads or background vocals, and I pre-program all that.
Yeah.
When someone's a BGV, the primary worship leaders are always straight to the PA, like on the control group.
Right.
They're never not up. They may be low, but they're never not on, just in case they say something or whatever.
Sure.
All my BGVs go to well, this is really only for my broadcast mix.
Okay.
You're asking about waves, though, but I have a plugin that's just my BGV group, and all it is an LA2A with the vitamin on it.
Oh, nice.
To just add a little bit of sparkle back on top. So,
without PQ.
And that's only for my broadcast mix. The way that Soundscape works, I have 2 objects. Or the way we're doing it, I have 2 objects on the stage that are BGV 1 and 2, and they're kind of mid-stage. Upstage, downstage, and kind of mid-stage, left, right.
Yeah.
And I assign them to wherever they're standing on the stage. I assign them to those buses so that they're coming out from that spot on the stage. However, the way so with Soundscape, you're mixing depth as well as breadth, so you can you can take things back, and so the BGVs are just a layer in there. I mean, if you took them off, you'd hear that they were gone.
Yeah.
But it's like you shouldn't hear any particular singer in there. They should just be another layer, another instrument.
Right.
And so you don't want, with Soundscape, you don't want to assign one thing to more than one object, because Soundscape is trying to localize that sound. And if you're sending one vocal to two different things, Soundscape is now localizing their audio to both of those, and it gets really squirrely.
Right.
It gets really phasey in certain spots.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's a different. It seems like you're kind of having to think about that a little bit more.
Definitely. So yeah, that's one of the plugins I'm using. Again, it's only for my broadcast mix. Other than that,
anything fancy on maybe drums in particular?
I'm using torque on my snare drum just to give it a little bit extra thud.
That's what I was going to ask. I find that like snare drums that sound good, torque helps it sound a little bit better, like just kind of fatter.
Yeah.
But even like if the snare doesn't sound great, I feel like torque still might not really do too much for me.
Well, I mean, you got to start with the source. We have a Black Beauty. I mean, it's a great snare drum, but it does have a ring around 140 that I'm not super fond of.
Gotcha.
And so what I'm doing is I'm cutting that on the desk, but then I'm boosting getting really super specific, and I'm boosting right below that and adding torque to it just to kind of get it so it kind of still hits you in the chest. You know, Andrew Stone used to say, kick drum, you should feel the kick drum in your chest and the snare in your teeth.
Right.
So, so that's what I'm shooting for. Other than that, I don't think I'm doing anything for drums. Okay. It says kick, but I'm really not using any of that. I have a drum and guitar parallel compression, but that's again only going to broadcast. It's not going to the PA.
Sure.
I have a rack on my my bass guitar. It's not a lot of processing happening. A little bit of R bass. Yeah. A little bit of F6 and a little bit of LA2A again.
Seems like you're using pretty standard stuff.
Yeah,
here.
Nothing crazy. The most crazy thing I have in here, and I never use it on a Sunday. It only gets used for Christmas. Is this Brower Motion plugin. So it's got a circular pan and a left-right pan, and in Soundscape it makes it sound like things are flying around the room.
Oh, wow.
So there's one note in one song in GOC that I use this one plugin on.
You just bring it up on, and
it's only here because I just never took it out. I don't ever use it for a Sunday.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've never bothered using it. Especially live. I mean,
it's pretty cool. You have to get into it.
Gotcha.
All of my reverbs are happening in waves.
Okay.
I have a short and a long verb and a chorus, and all the vocals get the short verb. Only the leads get the long verb and the chorus.
Right.
And then I have I use the tap tempo in here. The software update that just came out allows you to tap into waves. So I have a short halftime, 0.5, the way that the Digico sets it up.
Yeah.
That's on just for my leads, and it's up kind of all the time. And then I have an H delay for the long verb, and I do that so that I can do like triple tap delays. You can't really do that effectively on the console. And so that's my short and my long delays. Again, only my leads get those. I have an orchestra reverb that only gets used for broadcast. I have a room snare, gated snare, snare long, gated snare, room. And then I have
a few options there.
And then all of my guitar EQ, all of my guitar processing is done in waves. So I am a huge, and again F6, but I have this SSL EV2, which is just money. It just sounds so good on guitars. So I'm not doing anything on the desk for guitars. Everything is in here. We have 2 stereo electric guitars that are running through a Kemper's, basically, or modelers. Okay. And so, there's no onboard EQ or anything happening. It's all being done in here. And then the F6 is really nice because it takes that little edge out of the same thing. It's that low mid, like 140 and then 3K, I think, 2.4, and just enough to where when they're really pushing it, it doesn't get brittle.
So with regards to kind of going back to drums, are you guys using any like triggers as gates or anything like that? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. We have triggers on. We have 4 toms and a snare. All 4 of them all 5 of those drums have got triggers on them. We're using the Roland triggers, and all they're doing is triggering the gates. I don't trigger sounds with them.
We do a similar thing, just as gates. No matter how good the sample sounds, I can never get it to sound or trigger correctly, like in a live scenario. Yeah. So.
Well, the drums themselves sound really good. So I'm not trying to change the tonality of the drums, but having the gates on the toms allows you to. The snare will never open the toms, and it really. I mean, you still have the inherent problems of gates with things. You can hear the lispy sounds of, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the way they sound with it.
And yeah, I noticed you weren't using like any Autotune or anything on vocals, just kind of keeping it dry.
Yep. We have Autotune in broadcast, but I don't use it out here.
Okay. Have you tried it out here before at all?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just, truthfully, I'm slightly terrified of ending up on worship fails. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. I mean, there's a mix knob, you know, you could kind of like put it at 50%.
I know. I've never been an Autotune user, and so I'm not super fluent with it. But I mean, I'm not, like, all of our primary worship leaders are all great. Like, I'm not trying to fix anything out here.
Sure. Yeah. That's the benefit of having great musicians and singers. Cool. Let me see here. So, what would you say is kind of like, you know, one of the things that you've kind of learned, kind of mixing wise, that's kind of like giving you that extra, you know, 5-10% in the last couple of years that, you know, whether it's like your approach to your console file or just kind of in general?
Over the last couple of years, well, certainly over the last 10 or whatever months it's been since this PA went in, it's been all learning stuff new. So it's been just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and experimenting with things. And you start off when we first put it in with like, okay, let's get the vocals right, and then okay, let's work on guitars, let's work on whatever, and then the beginning of the year it's just a lot of virtual sound checking, and then I've connected with a number of people that are in this world and gotten tips from them. And I mean, I've been trying to do, like we were saying earlier, the temptation is to always do more.
Right.
And I'm trying to not do that. So I'm a huge fan of the RVox plugin.
Yep.
However, I get a similar result, I feel, from the onboard compressor, the Mustard.
Really?
And so it's like, instead of adding one more plugin to my chain, I'm like, okay, let me just top that off with that, so that if waves were not there, I wouldn't lose what I've got. It wouldn't be the same. We actually had an issue when we first updated the software on this whatever it was, back in April, where waves on my A engine was not engaged. It said everything was fine, but they started rehearsal Sunday morning, and it was like, okay, something's wrong. Like everything was there, but it was not right. It was, you could tell something was. And then started messing around and realizing when I'm muting this plugin rack, nothing's going away. I switched the B engine, and it immediately cleaned the mix up. Like, immediately was like, okay, that's where it made me feel good to know that. Sorry, I bumped my microphone.
That's fine.
It made me feel good to know that my plugins were actually doing something.
Right.
Instead of like, oh, that thing hasn't been engaged for 2 years.
So it
really did make a difference, but it was still there. So like, I didn't lose all of my audio. But again, for me, waves, it's all about intentionality, but waves is kind of what adds that extra 10%. And we talked about the our Gift of Christmas show, and the Gift of Christmas, our goal. So Act 1 is kind of a beast. There's 30 songs in Act 1. It's a 3-act show, I'm sorry. And there's 30 songs in Act 1, and Act 1 last year was all brand new. And so with a new PA. And so there was so much learning that had to happen in a very short amount of time. And our goal was like, look, if we can get to 15% or 85% this year, that's a win. Yeah. And then you refine it in 24. And like Jonathan Walker, our MD, and I were talking, and we're like, I think we got better than 85%. But there's still a number of things. Again, it's all massaging it. I was telling people last year, it's like, it really bothers me that 24 is going to sound better than 23, but that's just the way it's got to be, because I'm still learning. But so there's some automation. You can use like black tracks or Zac tracks with this system so that it follows people around. But at least for right now, last year we looked into it and it was not cost effective at all. So we didn't do that. But there's a software called I'm completely drawing a blank on it right now.
That's fine.
Anyway, there's a software. I'm going to feel really stupid when I remember it. Gareth Owens designed it, and it does automation. So you can set up cues, so you can have an object, you can store it over there at this timecode cue. It takes timecode in, and then they take the same amount of time every single time to walk from there to there. And so I can make that cue start there and end there and make it a 30-second long cue. Oh, wow. So now it has the effect of making it sound like they're walking across the stage. I didn't get to do that last year. And so on scene, EN, it's on scene, which is what allows you to move the objects around in the space. And then there's on space, which is an effect modeler. So they've gone through and they've sampled different venues all around the world, and you can apply those to objects in the room, and it's localization-based audio or effects. So if I have a reverb, if you're standing mid-stage and I put a reverb on your microphone, if you walk, it's going to come out here. Well, in a normal reverb, if you move over there, the reverb is still going to come out the same over here. With on space, it localizes it so it sounds like it's coming from over there.
Right.
So we have on space in here, which is really great. NSnap, that's what it's called.
Okay.
NSnap.
NSnap. Yeah.
So NSnap is the software that allows us to. And again, we were building this thing from the ground up basically last year, so we just didn't have time to get to that point. I actually got to the point near the end of the run of shows where I was manually grabbing with the mouse and I was moving things across, like as they walked, I was following them with the mouse across the stage. So I want to automate that as much.
Hopefully you weren't having to do that a lot because,
it actually was really fun. But the problem is, like, if I were not there, if I got sick or something, it's like, no, I want it to be the same every show.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. And then in terms of like your kind of workflow, are you like, in terms of, each of the banks, kind of what's kind of your thought process? You probably keep drums and everything like on the left or inputs on the left?
Yeah, so the way because on the SD7, this screen can't be a master screen, like I can't manipulate anything on these banks.
Yeah.
You can only do that on the left and the right. So this is all of my music. So this is vocals, drums, guitars, keys, tracks, effects. And then layer 2 is all of my orchestra. So strings A, strings B, winds, brass A, brass B, and orchestral percussion. It's like the timpani. And then 3 is choir. And my drum triggers are there. So I keep everything there like that. This bank of 4 changes depending on what I'm using. This top one is kind of the stuff I get to all the time. So I can always get to my guitars right here, my tracks, my delay, my vocal delay, because I do that manually for different for different moments.
Yeah, that's an interesting section that a number of other consoles don't really have.
Yeah, this extra bank of 14 faders is
and it's like right there. It's not like you're going far away.
Awesome. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so like the SD5, we have an SD5 in another building, and I love the Surface, but it's missing that layer, and you come to miss it. Yeah. Down here, I pretty much park on my control groups all the time. Like this almost never changes other than to get something really quick and go back to it again.
Right.
So I have all of my music stuff, which is vocals, everything music related, orchestra, band, everything on this one music fader, except for keys. I have keys on their own control group so that during like a prayer movement, I can kill everything but the keys. Or like during the messages, when pastor gets up to preach, I leave that fader up all the time, so because I don't always see when they slip out in the dark and they start padding underneath him. That way I don't miss that cue. And then down here is all of my money channels. I have multiple layers with the same things on the same fader, so that if I happen to be somewhere else, I can't. My faders, I've always got the main pastor's mics and stuff, baptism, all my video, my primary audio, video playbacks, like my Mac and like video playbacks are all right here. Excuse me. And then there's different things on different layers here, or different banks. And then as I move different layers, again, there's my kind of my legacy broadcast routing. So my vocal, my parallel compression and everything. But then I have my rhythm section, and this is all of these objects here. So every input hitting Soundscape it's over Dante, so there's 64 objects. So it's basic all but one thing hitting Soundscape is a group. That way I can assign anything to it at any time. Instead of being like a direct output of the hi-hat, there's a hi-hat group, and it just goes through that. So if for whatever reason I wanted to send something else down there, I don't know, it's happened on occasion where I'll have a violin, let's just say, and that violin, I have enough extra objects that in that case I can actually give him his own object. But anyway, it just made it easier for me for troubleshooting to have everything be a bus output, except for one aux, everything's a bus. And then that's where all these come in. These are all those buses. And then so this is my outputs, and then on Soundscape over here, I have input meters going into Soundscape. So if I'm not hearing something, if I'm seeing it there and I'm not hearing it, it's something on the PA side of things. If I'm not hearing it, I'm not seeing it there, and I am seeing it. Well, back to what I just said. If I'm seeing it here and not seeing it here, it means it's something on the PA side.
Yeah.
If I don't see it here, I'm not going to see it there either. And now I know it's something in the desk that's muted or turned, you know. I
feel like that's really adding another layer of like troubleshooting.
Right, exactly. And I've used it a lot. It was just kind of out of necessity.
Yeah.
Nick with D&B built this page for me. And actually, this is where I park on Sundays. It's just my main inputs page, just so I can keep an eye on things.
Look at it,
yeah, because once the
good.
PA is unmuted from the overview screen, I'm really not needing that anymore, and I kind of park here.
Yeah.
I have other views that allow me to see the objects for the band, for tracks, and for other utility positions. But that's mostly, for a Sunday, that stuff almost never changing. It kind of parks where it lives, parks where it is, and stays there the whole time. So I stay on the input side of things.
Gotcha. And then in terms of like, I don't know if I don't see any other crazy outboard gear over here really, so no fancy preamps or...
Nope. I've got, this is our timecode reader. So our tracks rig has got a timecode channel. I don't really use that for Sundays. There's been an occasion where I have. Like for an Easter thing, heavy timecode usage for Christmas. The entire show is run off of timecode. So this is timecode coming in.
Okay.
And then this spits out MIDI into the desk, and then it comes back through here. So if I see timecode here, it gets another troubleshooting stage. If I see it here and not here, it's something in the desk. If I'm not seeing it here, it's probably something on the track side of things.
Gotcha.
My overview screen. This, I only have, on the Digico, it's got 2 engines, like I said, and there's an external monitor output for each engine, but I don't want to have one more monitor here. So this actually has a little DVI AB switcher, so that's engine A.
Oh, okay.
And that's engine B, which they're exactly the same. But
yeah,
that way, if I had to switch engines because of a problem,
you could just
push the button and switch it over. Yeah.
That's actually pretty...
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Other than that, I've got my just the Mac here, which is handling Reaper, and background music playback here. This is my A2 station over here, so they come in here, and this is all on a rotating swivel, so they can flip this around in my A2. They're my ears on comm on a Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Because I have a shoutback system, so our Readle panels, I have an option. I can select a button, and it sends all my inputs and outputs from Readle out of that speaker, so I can use my talkback microphone to talk into comm, and I can also use it to talk to the stage. And then I can hear back from all of those sources on my shoutback speaker.
Gotcha.
But once we're done with rehearsal, doors are open. I don't want that to be on because I've got people behind me. But I've got my A2, so I mute all that, and then he's my ears on comm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then like for our Spanish study, I don't usually have an A2 for that, and so I'll flip it back around for me, and then I'll leave this on, but kind of a low level, just so I can. There's still people behind me, but they're a little more spread around, so I'll keep it on, but kind of at a lower volume,
just so you know something's coming through.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. The setup that you guys have, I think it's really awesome. I need to definitely swing by again now with the new system and listen to how it sounds. But
welcome anytime.
I'm sure it's quite different from our regular D&B rig right now.
Yeah. It's pretty much different from any other PA I've ever mixed on. You don't notice it as much. Like you get so used to it that when I'll go and mix in our student room, which is a great system. It's a Meyer rig. Again, it sounds great, but I'm all of a sudden very much aware that it's left and right.
Yep.
There is technically nothing in the middle. So it just takes some getting used to. First world problems.
For sure. What's the best way for someone to keep up with you?
I am on Instagram.
Okay.
It's the Mike Smith, MIC. So it's the _MIC_Smith.
Cool.
I'm on Facebook, but Instagram. My email here is just msmith@prestonwood.org.
Gotcha. And I guess with regards to this campus, what would you say is like the easiest way to kind of get plugged in, audio-wise, or?
Yeah, we have a great media team. They're actually doing a ministry fair here on the 18th and 25th. But if you just email media@prestonwood.org, someone will get back to you and get you plugged in.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Sounds great.